Thank you for tuning in to Channel 5, WKJN.
The Cajun!
I'm Carter Davis.
And I'm Davis Carter.
And here's what's making news. Our top story tonight. On January 1st, 1831, an abolitionist named William Lloyd Garrison published a pro-abolition newspaper called The Liberator about abolition.
Written by William Lloyd Garrison, this paper is making slaveholders uneasy because of its abolitionistic views that slavery should be abolished and all slaves be set free immediately. Slaveholders believe that this abolitionistic movement is an attack on their slaveholding lifestyle of slavery.
The news, 2 new states have been added to the Union. Territories of Kansas and Nebraska have been admitted, and we've been told that they will decide whether they will be free states or slave states in the upcoming months.
Pro-slavery Missourians hope it'll be a slave state where slavery is allowed, and the anti-slavery Kansasians want it to be a free state where slavery is not allowed.
You definitely just made that word up.
No, I did.
In other news, Kansas is bleeding profusely.
A man by the name of John Brown, who not only has brown hair, brown eyes, whose favorite snack is brownies and favorite team is the Cleveland Browns, massacred 5 men with the help of a small group of abolitionists around Pottawatomie Creek in Kansas. The men were asleep, sleeping sleepily in their sleeping bags, when they ran swords across their necks.
In other news, Charles Sumner has a sore back, and the rest of his body, including his leg,
his back,
his arms,
his back,
his head,
his back,
his toes,
his back,
and his nose.
My back!
On the Senate floor today, Senator Charles Sumner from Massachusetts was beaten with a cane by Preston Brooks, a relative of Senator Andrew Butler from South Carolina. Reportedly, Butler was abusively verbally abused by Sumner over his pro-slavery views.
In other news, a black man sues for his own freedom.
Dred Scott, a slave to the late John Emerson, an Army surgeon, has taken his case to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney declared that Scott was not a citizen, therefore he could not bring suit in U.S. courts. Scott argued that while his master was still alive, they lived in free states, and that should make him a free man. Taney said that the government had acted unconstitutionally by declaring that every state above the 3630 parallel line free, since the Fifth Amendment says the government cannot deny anyone property and slaves are considered as such. Scott eventually purchased his own freedom.
In other news, Brown goes down. A crazy northern lunatic who's crazy and from the north went crazy in the south.
Over the last 3 days, October 16th to 19th, Brown had 21 men with him as they tried to raid the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, and arm slaves with guns. He expected to arm 1,500 slaves. Fail. Southerners from the South say this shows northern aggression because they're being aggressively aggressive.
In other news, a tall, dark, and handsome man has been elected president. Abraham Lincoln, a Republican from the North, has won the presidency with 40% of the popular vote.
With him went half of New Jersey, all of the North, and California and Oregon. Despite his claims of a moderate position, he has some Southerners worried that he may make slavery illegal throughout the country. Viewed as a victory for abolition, some deep South states are getting a little uneasy.
In other news, South Carolina succeeds to secede. Today, December 20th, 1860, marks the successful start of the Southern secession.
Now, Carter, I'll bet this success leads to the secession of Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas.
Right. I bet they'll call themselves the Confederate States of America. It's realistic. In other news, war!
God damn!
At 4 a.m. this morning, Confederate forces opened fire on the federal
Fort Sumter. Deep within the Confederate lines in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, the men at the Union fort were running out of supplies, and without them they would be taken by the Confederates. Lincoln sent a message to the governor of South Carolina, F.W. Pickens, saying ships were coming carrying supplies. not arms or troops. The message was sent to General P.G.T. Beauregard, who just didn't care. After warning the Federal troops to evacuate, Beauregard ordered a shelling of the fort. Although no one died, this marked the beginning of the war between the North and South, and a bloody one it shall be.
In other news, President Lincoln has announced the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all slaves and making them free.
On September 22nd, 1862, Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, saying that all slaves in the Confederate States of America would be free if they didn't return by January 1st, 1863. This focused the war from states' rights more towards slavery.
In other news, Pennsylvania is bathing in blood. Today marks the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg, and from the looks of it, it could be a very, very bloody battle. We now go to Eli Mansfield, our reporter in the field at the Battle of Gettysburg.
Dear God.
May heaven be with us.
This just in. I'm being told that the Union has won the Battle of Gettysburg, and with 46,000 to 51,000 combined losses, both sides have taken a severe blow. But this has come to be a turning point for the North. The Confederates are now on their heels and have lost all momentum they may have had prior to this day.
In other news, Fort Wagner has been attacked by the 54th Massachusetts Infantry on the evening of July 18, 1863. That was last night.
The infantry is mostly African Americans and former slaves. Robert Gould Shaw led the regiment as they charged on foot. He was killed during the attack. Although it was a defeat for the Union, it was a moral victory because it showed the will of the black soldiers.
In other news, our beloved president was shot this afternoon at Forest Theater in Washington, D.C. Thank you, John Wilkes Booth.
John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer, along with a few other conspirators, had planned to assassinate President Lincoln, as well as Vice President Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward. Their plan was to send the Union into chaos, giving the Confederacy a fighting chance again after they surrendered to Grant last week at Appomattox. Although Lincoln was the only confirmed kill, we will wait to see how the Union will react to this.
Now go to sports with Michael. Well, that was last week's Boston Marathon. Now Carter with a report on the Memphis race riots.
On May 1st and 2nd, 1866, some of the country's worst race riots broke out in Memphis, Tennessee. 46 African Americans were killed, along with 2 whites, and 75 were injured. 100 people were robbed, along with 5 women raped. 91 homes were burned, along with 4 churches and 8 schools. $17,000 in federal property was destroyed, and hundreds of blacks were jailed.
In other news, ghosts roam the deep south. Today in Tennessee, Confederate veterans formed a hate group known as the Ku Klux Klan, or KKK.
In the name of white supremacy, these members perform acts of terrorism, violence, and even go as far as lynching African Americans, Jews, and other minority groups. These men can be identified by the white sheets and white hats they wear to most demonstrations. war started on April 12, 1861 at the Battle of Fort Sumter, and it ended on April 9, 1865 when General Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse.
Well, that's it for our broadcast tonight. I'm Carter Davis.
And I'm Davis Carter.
And from all of us here at WKJN,
The Cajun!
good night.
Yeah.
Alright. In other news,
We suck at reporting.
Zoom in.
well, that's it for us tonight. I messed up.
Yo, what up, messed up?
Ah.
Zooming in. And go.
Well, that's it for our broadcast tonight. I'm Davis Carter.
And I'm Davis. You're definitely Carter Davis. Okay.
You got the dog in the background.
Well, that was last week's Boston Marathon. Winner, retarded Alex winner. In other news, Brown goes down. A crazy northern pissing.